Hello, my beautiful disasters. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about all things that seem beautiful at first, but turns disastrous in the end. Before we get into today's story, be sure to hit that subscribe button to support the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell button so that way you don't miss out on any new content that I upload here on the channel. Now, let's get into today's case of Jassi Sidhu. Now, this case revolves around honor killings, which are, acts of violence, usually murder committed by male family members against female family members who perceive to have brought dishonor upon the family. Now, 5,000 plus women are killed annually for this reason of honor. Not limited to one specific religion or faith like the Middle East, South Asia. Most honor killings occur in India and Pakistan. Subsequently, trials would often focus on the woman's alleged behavior rather than the violence committed against her.
The woman who will always be his bride, Jaswinder Kaur Sidhu, or Jassi, was born in Canada and grew up in the shadow of British Columbia's coastal mountains. Jassi's home was Maple Ridge, a suburban community about an hour's drive from Vancouver. This area of British Columbia is known for its large and profitable blueberry industry. In the last 3 decades, thousands of immigrants from India's Punjab province have settled here. In 1970, Jassi's family came here and set up a successful blueberry farm. Hers was always a conservative family, observant of the Sikh religion and Punjabi culture. When Jassi was young, her father was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Much of the decision-making in the household was taken over by another man, Jassi's uncle, Surjit Singh Badesha, the mother's eldest brother.
The leader of Jassi's clan was Surjit Singh Badesha, Jassi's uncle, who wanted the entire family to stay together to reduce their expenses and establish a common bond of values. Their home would serve as a showcase to their traditions and a place where they could live with their transparent culture from Punjab. The clan was able to purchase a 9-acre land near the Jerry Solana Park in Maple Ridge, Canada. After overcoming the local residents' concerns about his plans, Badesha and his relatives actually constructed a massive home that measured 25 rooms. The Badeshas used the land of their workshop and barn, and they were able to earn a living by cultivating blueberries, which was worth around $150,000 annually. The compound also housed a janitorial service known as Olympia Cleaning. As the 10th anniversary of Jassi's death approached in 2010, the family had put their property up for sale. The asking price for that property was around $2.598 million they were asking for. Growing up in Maple Ridge, Jassi felt like her family is more stricter than the other families in Canada.
Jassi's cousin Bindi Lit remembers how Jassi loved her Indian heritage. That's Jassi in the dark dress.
She liked East Indian music. She liked the Indian clothes. She wasn't really into the Western culture at all. She was kept away from all the wrong things.
Could she freely sort of go out with her friends and things like that?
No.
Why not?
It was prohibited. She wasn't allowed to do that.
Jassi felt that her life was controlled by everyone except her, which is true. Because growing up for Jassi's days were simple. It revolved around school, prayer, and household chores. She also occasionally got too close to like the farm help, and her behavior was punished with curses and slaps. Jassi learned about honor, shame, and punishment in her home, which is why the family men were focused on preventing her from dishonoring them. Women were expected to be submissive and obedient. School and education are nothing more for Jassi other than a place her family sent her to learn how to read and write. There was no impetus for a higher education because they figured, okay, well, you just need to learn how to read and write. You don't need to, go to college and become something more for your husband. You just need to, honor the family. Basically, it just evolved around money. Money. Jassi's family felt that like higher education is not needed for women whose husbands are chosen for them. Her mother has done it, and her mother's mother had done it. Basically, everybody in the family.
Jassi graduated at about the exact same time that my own daughter did.
Jim Longridge was her principal at Pitt Meadows Secondary School. He remembers a good student, quiet, respectful, friendly.
I see in Jassi so many young daughters and sons who had every right and have every right to live the life they wished. And in her case, for whatever reason, she was killed, and it should not have happened, and someone ought to pay.
But what Jassi couldn't know back then is that following her dreams would ultimately pit Canadian values against her family. For one thing, she wanted a career and was studying at a local beauty school. And on a family trip to India a couple of years before, she had fallen in love with a young man named Mitu. He was handsome and athletic, a local star of a sport called kabaddi, a strenuous form of tag. But he was also a poor rickshaw taxi driver, and she knew her uncle would never approve. Deb DeVos.
She also stated that her mother sternly delivered a sermon about how white students were promiscuous and had no morals, and they were also reportedly available for sex and got drunk and took drugs. Jassi's mother was afraid that Jassi would become too westernized. Jassi's protest about her classmates' characterization fell on deaf ears because of the prejudiceness held by her family. Jassi was alarmed by her mother's revelation. Jassi was alarmed by her mother's revelation, as it was the first time she had ever heard her mom use the word sex. And she was also annoyed that her cousins were sent to a headmaster's office back at school after they were caught drinking, but nothing happened to them. Like, yeah, they got in trouble at school, but once they got home, that was it. Like, nothing happened. The family didn't yell at them or anything. Basically, it's seen that men can do whatever they freaking want in her home. The drinking incident actually gave Jassi the opportunity to push the envelope. It was still suffocating for Jassi, but speaking out against the family was also a dishonor. So Jassi did what she was told to do, like a good Punjabi girl. Jassi tried to speak with her father, but he was always like depressed about one thing or another. He would only say that she was a good girl, and he would recite a story from the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the Sikh Holy Bible. Jassi had a hard time living in Maple Ridge because she had a balanced, strict family pressures and the lifestyle of her acquaintances. Despite the pressures from her family, Jassi loved her family, especially her mom.
She wanted a career as a beautician, and she enrolled at a school run by Deb DeVos. Teacher and student soon became close friends.
She was never allowed to date in high school. Never. She wasn't allowed to go out by herself. She certainly couldn't go to a nightclub with girlfriends. If she did go out somewhere, she was usually accompanied by another family member. She didn't have freedom like we have.
Jassi was now chafing at the restrictions and the domination of her male cousins and her uncle Surjit.
She hated the control they had. She always felt that they were following her or spying on her.
But Jassi's experiences paled in comparison to the ordeals of Me Too's early life. In the 1980s, Punjab was awash in the violence of the Sikh separatist movement. It led to a military attack on the Golden Temple at Amritsar, the Sikhs' holiest shrine. A crackdown followed, and thousands of young men with Sikh turbans and beards were rounded up. Innocent Punjabi teens were branded terrorists.
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਖਾੜਕੂ ਨਾਲ ਅਟੈਚ ਹੋਣ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਦੀ ਸੀ, ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਕਰੰਟ ਲਾਉਣਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਰੀਰ ਨੂੰ ਝਟਕੇ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਮੂੰਹ ਚੋਂ ਝੱਗ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ, ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨਾਲ ਬੇਹੋਸ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ।
After graduating high school, Jassi worked at a beauty salon in Maple Ridge called Peaches and Cream. She also enrolled in a beauty school college as well. Everyone in the family had to contribute to the household's income. Having a job for Jassi, it was her way to escape the strict pressures from her family. She loved going to work at the beauty salon and making friends. Jassi loved also hearing her co-workers' way of life, going about it without a care in the world, listening to how much freedom they had was exciting to her. Jassi's brother would drive her to and from work every day. Her paychecks was deposited into a common account in which Jassi's uncle was in control of. Jassi's uncle, Surjit Singh Badesha. Jassi's uncle, Surjit, is all about money. Jassi would tell Me Too that her family always talked about traditions and honor, but the bottom line is money. That's all that really mattered. Surjit is Jassi's mother's brother and had taken over the family's affair after Jassi's father was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was also heavily medicated as well. So he was kind of in and out of it, basically. Everyone in the family worked and all paychecks went to Surjit. So who controlled the family finances? Surjit and Jassi's mother viewed Jassi as a valuable asset to the family. The age-old practice of giving dowries, which was meant to provide the bride should something unfortunate occur with her husband, was another means to get rich for the duo. During this time, Jassi became a subject of discussion among her relatives as they looked for a suitable match for her. The family would throw parties. Jassi would dress up as the main attraction as her family talked about potential suitors. The comments ranged from cruel to unimaginable. As the cultural practice of this age continued to develop, the plans for Jassi became apparent. Plans for Jassi were clear as a cultural practice to continue to develop. Her husband would be of the same social standings and caste as her family. He would be able to strengthen their reputation and also strengthen their wealth. Jassi's uncle had an eye on an older guy, nearly 60 years old, from a neighboring village in India. The prospective bridegroom was rich and a widower. He also had children and they wanted to go live in Canada. Jassi was the ticket to this plan. It would be considered good for both families because Surjit would get rich from it because the man would pay them a fortune for the Canadian visas, and Jassi's family in return would not have to put up any dowry at all. So Jassi had already said no to this whole thing, but her family, her mother and uncle, were pushing her into the arrangement. Jassi was starting to run out of excuses. The search for a bridegroom would begin in Punjab as it had been unsuccessful in Canada. However, this was a simple plan and it had a fatal flaw. Jassi fell in love. Jassi fell in love with Surjit Singh Sidhu, also known as Me Too.
In the 1980s, Punjab was awash in the violence of the Sikh separatist movement. It led to a military attack on the Golden Temple at Amritsar, the Sikhs' holiest shrine. A crackdown followed and thousands of young men with Sikh turbans and beards were rounded up. Innocent Punjabi teens were branded terrorists.
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਖਾੜਕੂ ਨਾਲ ਅਟੈਚ ਹੋਣ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਦੀ ਸੀ, ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਕਰੰਟ ਲਾਉਣਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਰੀਰ ਨੂੰ ਝਟਕੇ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਮੂੰਹ ਚੋਂ ਝੱਗ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ, ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨਾ ਬੇਹੋਸ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀਗੀ।
This happened when Me Too was just 16 years old. He was traumatized by his experience. He shaved his beard, abandoned his turban, the symbols of his religion, and he struggled to rebuild his life. He turned to the traditional sport of kabaddi, a kind of team tag played in the withering heat. Kabaddi gave him a new strength and made him a star. By 1995, agile, unbeatable, he was touring Punjab professionally. That year, Jassi came here, the village where her mother was born, and heard stories of the handsome kabaddi player.
Me Too is from a lower class family, one that is not suitable for Jassi as her family would view him, despite that he is even the local village kabaddi star player. Jassi, her mother, her mutual aunt and uncle, Surjit Singh Badesha, were on a visit to the city of Jiran in Punjab state of India in December of 1994. Now, Me Too was returning from a tournament in Rocket where his team had just won a tournament. Me Too and his friends Sunny and Badari were about to board a Maratha when he sees Jassi. Jassi was also boarding the same Maratha as he was, and Jassi was sitting with her cousin Santosh, her companion, who would later arrange their clandestine meetings for them to meet. Me Too said that when he saw Jassi, it was like love at first sight for him. He really was taken back by Jassi's beauty, even though she appeared at the time to be, shy and everything. Also, I just want to say as a side note, in a village, all the young women are considered sisters until they are married, and all the young men are considered brothers even after they are married. You could not just walk up to girls in India and ask like who they are. So only your mother or your real sister could do that, unless the sister, of course, volunteered the information. A woman having a full-blown conversation with a young man in public was taboo. At least to the unmarried women would be like labeled a loose woman if they're seen doing this. So Me Too had to be careful. So his friend Badari strikes up a conversation with Jassi's cousin Santosh, because they actually knew her within the village, so that Me Too could like go over and find out more about who the girl was sitting next to Santosh, basically was Jassi. But he ends up just being nervous, and he couldn't find the words to even say to Jassi. He said that Jassi was like shy, and she was like looking down, at her hands, and she just seemed like really shy, and he was nervous, and he tries to say something like some smooth line from a Bollywood movie, which probably was found to be like cheesy and stupid, especially when Jassi didn't even respond back to what he had said. He said, and I quote, "Seems that a ferry has descended on Jagaran today," end quote. They arrived at the village. As they were about to disembark, Jassi begins to quickly search for a piece of tissue, and she took out her dark lipstick, and instead of like giving Meetu her number, she just ends up drawing a heart with an arrow through it. Meetu would later say that at the time he really didn't know what it meant, but he knew that he was just taken by her and that he was in love. Later that day, Meetu looked out his window and sees Jassi on a scooter looking at him. When he approached her, she tries to, start the scooter to leave, but was having trouble. So Meetu then pretends to like help her with the scooter, and he starts to ask Jassi questions, try to like get to know her. He asked her what her name is, and she responded Jassi. But their conversation was interrupted by Meetu's mom, who began to walk over towards them because, like I said before, a guy really couldn't just walk up to a girl and start a whole-fledged conversation without the family's approval. Before his mom could find out what was going on, Jassi hands Meetu another piece of tissue that read "I love you" in the same dark red lipstick. Jassi then gets on her bike, and then she just leaves. She just takes off before Meetu's mother ends up showing up. Of course, Meetu tells her he does, even though they felt that things were like going a little bit too fast, but they didn't care. They both were in love with each other, and they were willing to do anything to be together. They would find ways to meet without Jassi's family knowing. At first, it was Santosh Santosh who organized, for them to meet up, probably without the family knowing. But then when Santosh had left to get married, they had to figure out another way how they could meet up. So Jassi actually involved her aunt to help her out. They would like find ways to meet without, the family knowing. So Meetu said that he would go out and buy Valium, and Jassi's aunt would put it in the family's food for Jassi's strict relatives, who were basically her mom and her brother and the uncle, so that they would be able to see each other inside the house. Jassi's aunt would sit close by enough for them to talk and be together privately, but also be somewhat near too. The aunt would also keep a lookout in case Jassi's mom, brother, or uncle wakes up, like if the volume wears off or something. One day it did. One day the volume wore off and on Jassi's mom, and the aunt, surprisingly, she fell asleep. So she didn't see Jassi's mom get up heading towards where Jassi and Meetu were while they were talking and giggling and everything. She caught Jassi and started hitting Jassi, scolding her, and also was hitting Meetu as well. Meetu finally got the opportunity to run out of the room. Meetu was able to break free and ran out of the room that they were in and into the darkness back to his house before Jassi's male relatives set out looking for him. Good thing that the mom did not get a good look at his face, because even though they were like pretty much almost neighbors, like the male relatives, they were set out on a hunt to find Me Too. Jassi didn't give him a name or anything like that, and the mom said, she really didn't get a good look at his face, but he had to be from the village. And so Jassi's male relatives were like basically on a hunt for Me Too. They didn't have an idea that it was Me Too, but they were going around the village, knocking on every door, carrying with them bats and guns, looking for the man that was in Jassi's room. So after this had happened, the aunt actually ended up leaving abruptly, fearing that the family would find out that she was part of the whole thing. So again, they are now left with nobody to help them meet and for them to be together. So without the aunt, this made things even tougher for Jassi and Me Too to meet. So when Me Too would buy more volume, Jassi would be the one to put the volume in her family's food, and went up on the dosage as well to make sure that her family stayed asleep. So for the next 4 years, from 1995 to 1999, Jassi would write Me Too letters, but there was an issue. Me Too only spoke Punjabi. He didn't know how to read or write in English, and Jassi didn't know much Punjabi language. So Me Too would actually go to a teacher in the next village and learn how to read and write in English, as well as have the teacher translate his letters that Jassi would send to him. Jassi would hide the letters at her job in a locker to keep their relationship a secret. They would even speak to each other on the phone, where Me Too would actually travel like 10 miles to his friend Badari's PCO. It was like a phone booth. So like like a phone cafe or something like that. But he would go there probably like 2 a.m. in the morning and go speak to Jassi. Jassi and Me Too even made plans to get Me Too to Canada. Jassi even paid a man named Kuldeep, I think that's how you say his name, Kuldeep, $5,000. They paid Kuldeep $5,000 to get the necessary papers for Me Too to come to Canada, but it turned out to be a scam, which is sadly kind of common in India, where people would migrate to Canada and they was like, oh yeah, I can, get the papers and everything to get you to Canada, get you a Canadian visa and everything so you can live here, but usually they just end up taking the money and run. The guy was asking for $6,000, but Jassi only had $5,000, and he also started harassing her as well. And she's like, I gave him the money. I don't know what happened, because when she paid him the $5,000, Kuldeep gave her a receipt, which kind of odd. Like, why the hell would you give a receipt? But anyway, he gave her a receipt, but after he got the money, that was it. They never heard from him again. Homeboy just was gone. Like, yeah, he was gone with that $5,000. Once Jassi had paid him, some of that money was also to get Me Too a motorbike so that he didn't have to cycle 10 kilometers to his friend Sonny's PCO office. I'm sorry, I thought it was Badari, but it's Sonny's PCO office to speak to Jassi at 2 a.m. So yeah, Jassi was out $5,000, and Me Too felt so bad that, he really wanted to try to pay her back for losing that money and everything. Because it was so much, and he was grateful, but he just felt so bad she got scammed. So he tries to pay her back by being in more tournaments and try to win, save up some money and everything. But in 1998, he manages to get a phone in his house, which made things a bit easier for him and Jassi to speak to each other. But he was like really like around January, February 1999. Around January, February 1999, Jassi family goes to India for 3 months. The purpose of the visit is to arrange a marriage for Jassi. Jassi would also tell Me Too of the suitors that her family would bring to the house, and every single one, Jassi would just turn them down. Jassi and Me Too wanted to be together and get married, so Jassi hatched out a plan to get her family to let her go back to India to find a husband. She tells her mother that she does not like the Canadian boys here in Canada because they are too westernized, and she wanted to go to India to find a husband, marry an Indian boy. But really it was so that her and Me Too could be together at least, but really it was so that her and Me Too could be together at last and also get married. Surprisingly, the family buys into it. Jassi and Me Too are so in love that they are willing to do anything to be together. They both decide to get married. In order to do this, Jassi convinced her family to let her go to India and find a suitor, since ones in Canada was not working out for her, and her family agreed to this. So on March 15th, 1999, Jassi and Me Too marry secretly at a temple in Ludhiana in the Punjab, India, with the help of their friends, and spend their first night together in a hotel. They also taken a lot of photos of their wedding as proof, just in case her uncle and mother tries to cause trouble once they find out about the marriage. Now that they are married, they had to register the marriage, which they were told would take a few weeks, which this proven to be a problem for Jassi and Me Too. Now that they are married, they had to register the marriage, which they were told takes a few weeks, which to Jassi and Me Too is problematic because Jassi needed the marriage papers in order to get Me Too a visa to Canada, and she was about to leave in a few days, heading back to Canada. On April 19th, 1999, Jassi and Me Too marriage is registered and finalized in India. On April 19th, 1999, Jassi and Me Too's marriage is registered and finalized in India. Jassi then returns back to Canada with the marriage license as proof of their marriage. She kept the papers and letters, anything that was proof of her and Me Too's love at her job, away from her family from knowing. She tries to get a visa for Me Too. When she does this, rumors begin to spread about the secret wedding. Jassi's family is told that she's married Me Too, who is poor, but when she does this, rumors began to spread about a secret wedding that had happened. Jassi's family is told that she has married a man named Me Too, who is poor, but Jassi denies this story when she's asked by her family. Even when Me Too's mother found out by the temple priest's wife who had performed the nuptials, she asked Me Too about it, and he denied it, saying, "Oh, it's just rumors. It's not true. Don't worry about it. I'll just go and talk to her, talk to the temple priest's wife, or something. It's rumors, Mom. It's just rumors." So on February 9th, 2000, back in Canada, Jassi tries to arrange immigration for Me Too. Jassi sends a letter to Ottawa telling immigration officials that her uncle might try to give them false information about Me Too, which he later does. The two of them knew that they could not keep this big secret for long. So in June 1999, Jassi's family got confirmation from a relative that the rumors are true, that Jassi and Me Too is married. Jassi's brother goes to pick her up at her job, telling her that, oh, there's an emergency at home, you need to come home. Later, Jassi's uncle shows up at her job and they discovered all the letters and the marriage papers. Jassi's family is enraged. They slapped her, they yelled at her, and they even locked her in her room with no communication to the outside world, demanding that she divorce Mitu. On February 10, 2000, Jassi's uncle, Surjit, has drawn up an affidavit. Jassi's uncle, Surjit, has affidavit drawn up in Punjabi language that says that Mitu and his friends forced Jassi at gunpoint to marry Mitu. The uncle uses Jassi's signature that he obtained from her under the pretenses of buying her a new car to validate the complaint. Jassi is confined to her uncle's home. Jassi is confined to her uncle's home in Maple Ridge, British Columbia, Canada. She's not allowed to talk to anybody or anything. They ended up tricking her. So on February 10th, 2000, after finding this out and demanding Jassi to divorce Mitu, her uncle ends up getting an affidavit drawn up and ended up, basically it was in Punjabi language, and they go to Jassi and say, here, sign this. We're gonna just help, you know what, we forgive you. We're gonna help me to, get to Canada, and we're gonna buy you a car. And not being able to understand what the affidavit was saying, because like I said before, Jassi doesn't really know how to read Punjabi. She know how to speak it, but she doesn't know how to read it. So she did not know that this affidavit was saying that Mitu and his friends forced her at gunpoint to marry Mitu and to have sex with him and all that other stuff. So once the uncle gets the signature and everything, he ends up sending it, like faxing it to the police. And on February 23rd, 2000, 11 days after receiving the affidavit from Jassi's uncle, Indian police began the investigation of Mitu and his friends, Bandari and Sindra Kumar, for kidnapping Jassi, basically Sunny, for kidnapping Jassi. The two friends, Badari and Sunny, were arrested and held illegally for 4 days, as well as Mitu's mother and brother. Surjit, Jassi's uncle, ends up arriving from Canada and beats the men while they are in custody. Mitu is forced to actually go into hiding, and when he goes into hiding, he ends up being able to call Jassi, begging for help, and was like, why would you say these things? Why would you say that I forced you to marry me? Why would you say I forced you at gunpoint? Why would you do this? They have my mother, my brother, they're in jail. My two friends are in jail. And Jassi's like, what are you talking about? I did not know. Like, they told me that it was to help you get to Canada and that they forgave me. She's like, it was all in Punjabi. I didn't know what it was. And that's when she finds out what that affidavit was, that it was really to incriminate Mitu. So Mitu goes into hiding. He ends up staying at his mother's brother's house, basically his uncle. So Mitu goes there to stay with his uncle, and his uncle promises Mitu that he will help him come to Canada. So after telling Jassi what was going on and everything, and Mitu's like, why would you do this? And she's saying, so as she's telling him that she had no idea, she's been locked up for weeks and have not been able to talk to anybody. That was heartbreaking to Mitu. Mitu did not know that they had did this to her. She even told them that they beat me. I didn't know. I would never have done that if I would have known that that's what that affidavit was. She tells Me Too that she's sorry and that she would not have, done that if she would have known what it was. She said it was in Punjabi language. She didn't know. And Me Too is feeling really bad on his end because he could not do anything to protect his new wife. And he just felt bad that she is going through hell in Canada and everything. And that's the reason why he hadn't been able to speak to her for the last couple of weeks. So on February 23rd, 2000, 11 days after receiving the affidavit from Jassi's uncle, so after he gets done talking with Jassi, her uncle, Surjit, promises Me Too that he will help him come to Canada if he divorces Jassi. Me Too refuses. He says, no, I'm not divorcing her. And that pissed off Surjit even more. So on April 3rd, 2000, Jassi goes to the Canadian police in Maple Ridge. And after being threatened and hit by her family, on April 4th, 2000, Jassi has a need help. So the police come and they take Jassi away. The family is like yelling out insults at her and everything as she's leaving. When she was able to leave, Jassi then applies for a new passport because her uncle and mother took away her passport. Anything that would allow her to go to India and be with Me Too, they took it away. So she had to apply for a new passport. And a new one was issued on April 4th of 2000. So a new passport for Jassi was issued around April 2000. So she finally has that. And now she's making plans on April 13th, 2000. She leaves India, fearing that she would be killed or stop trying to leave Canada. Me Too finds out that Jassi is coming to India. He and his friends decide to wait for Jassi at the airport to safely get her to his uncle's house where he's been hiding out. And Me Too actually ended up staying at the airport for like 4 days. He ends up waiting at the airport for 4 days. His friends actually had to knew a security guard, that airport security guard that worked there. They bribed, and they also bribed someone else so that they could not only get Me Too into the airport, but also get it past, security and everything, and for him to wait for Jassi to get there, and also to help them look out for her as well, because the police there in India are very corrupt. So, in knowing that Jassi's uncle is wealthy and he pretty much is up there to the point where he has more authority, I guess you could say. So, and he also threatened that Jassi will never be able to, go to India or anything like that to see Me Too, and that he was going to kill them both, basically. So for 4 days, Me Too is in the airport waiting for her. He is even sleeping there in the baggage claim. And then one day a ticket clerk sees him and she's like, oh, what are you doing here? I've seen you here before, but you're not supposed to be here. And he basically pleads with her and tells her what was going on. So she's convinced. She's like, okay, I'll help you. And so they walk over to where she gets does the tickets and everything to try to see when Jassi's coming in. And at first they couldn't find anything, so she just basically tells him, hey, just go wait over there and I will see what I can do. Later on, she ends up finding out when Jassi's supposed to arrive, and it was on the 5th day. And he goes and tells his friend Sunny and Badari, hey, she's coming here on this day and everything, because they've been sleeping. His friend's been sleeping in the car while he's been sleeping in the airport. And so they find out when Jassi is supposed to be arriving in India. And so once she gets off the plane, she starts looking around and she sees Sunny and Badari, and she sees them, and she thinks at first that Me Too isn't there. And what was basically going on is that Me Too wanted to surprise her friend, their friends had the idea like, hey, once she gets off the plane, won't you like just jump out like a surprise, you know, and everything. So when he jumps out, she's happy, she's crying, she ran over to him, she's kissing him and everything. They're both just shaking and just, it's a beautiful story, like just in each other's arms, just so scared because of all this crap that is going on, because now he's wanted by the police. He's gone into hiding. He was sleeping in the fields and everything at first before he went to his uncle, and just, it was just crazy just waiting for her to get there. And so once she got there and everything, Jassi and Mitu then were set out to clear Mitu's name and also his mom and brother's name and everything. Jassi, when she was back in Canada, she got an affidavit drawn up stating that she got married to Mitu with her full consent, on her own. Nobody pressured her into doing anything and all that. And now she also got it notarized as well. So when she got to India, she actually took that same affidavit that she had drawn up before she had left Canada, and to prove that her family is lying about Mitu and that she was not forced to marry him, and that she married Mitu on her own accord. She didn't do it she wasn't being forced into it. So with this, Mitu's mother and brother are released. His other friends were released and everything. And he's staying at his uncle's house in hiding, basically. So in April 19th, 2000, Jassi and Mitu, on April 26, 2000, Jassi's uncle begins calling Darshan Singh, a wealthy local businessman in the Punjab area. It's like, okay, whatever. But on June 7th, 2000, Jassi's mother learns that the pair are in hiding at the home of Mitu's uncle's house. She ended up finding out by where they were by going through Jassi's phone records back in Canada, and was calling every single phone number that came up, and she was able to find where they were. So she traced them there by Jassi's cell phone records. She calls them there and speaks to Mitu and Jassi. Jassi believes that the call is a peace offering, but Mitu knows that Jassi's mother is full of shit. So he's like, don't tell her where we are. He kept telling Jassi, do not tell her where we are. Jassi doesn't tell her mother where they are, even though Jassi's like, okay, I'll send money, you know, I forgive, you know, we'll hash it out and everything. And Jassi loves her family and she loves her mother, and she really wants to believe that her mother is on her side, but really her mother is against her. And I feel so bad for Jassi having to fall for that and being so naive and not knowing who's on her side and who's not. But Mitu tells Jassi, hey, do not tell your mother where we are. But she eventually Jassi ends up telling her where they were the next day when her mom called, and she ends up telling her where they are. The people in the village actually was setting up, it was actually planned, the people in the village planned to do a post wedding celebration for them, and Mitu's mom actually met Jassi, welcomed her into the family. And when the village people in the community found out all about all this craziness that's going on, they wanted to do a post-wedding, ceremony for them, celebration and everything. And there were supposed to be 2 celebrations, one in where Mitu's uncle villages and the other at his mom's village. And they were going to have this whole celebration and everything. And the people in the village, this was to them and also to Mitu and Jassi, this was to show her parents, that her family, like, hey, look, we're all coming together. We accept their marriage. Why can't you? Let's just, it was basically to show our accepting of the marriage, and they are together as a community and as a family. And as I said, Jassi's family is right over that wall where Me Too's mom lives, so they could basically see what's going on. And so this was supposed to be, something, to celebrate and everything. So Me Too and Jassi doesn't stay at his mom's house fearing the worst. So after the celebration, they decided to stay at his uncle's home until the paperwork is filed with the police clearing Me Too's name in New Delhi. They had to meet with the Canadian High Commission on clearing Me Too's name as well. Jassi wanted to see Me Too's mother before they had returned back to Nariki, where Me Too's uncle lived. Over the last 2 days, villagers and Me Too's friends, Badari and Sunny, had spotted a truck and a car on either ends of the road leading to his home. The truck had 2 people in it, and it was on the side of the village leading towards the Nanakasar temple in Kalaran. While the car had 4 men, a villager had recognized some of the men as belonging to a local land mafia group and informed Me Too's mother that they had been asking people about Me Too's whereabouts. He said that they had been drinking heavily and talked about wanting to teach him a lesson for messing around with their cousin. So that was like one attempt on Me Too's life. And so Me Too's mom was like, heck no, you need to stay at your uncle's until this whole thing is filed and this whole thing is cleared up. So this section is what happened on the day that Jassi Sidhu was killed. Me Too and Jassi were on their way back from the Malkit night market. Me Too and Jassi were on their way back from the Malkit night market. They got onto their Vespa scooter. Jassi was on the back while Me Too was driving the scooter. They were getting close to Me Too's uncle's village. The moon lit the road that cuts across the wheat fields was deserted except for a white car that was parked near Shaki integration drain where Me Too and Jassi had walked earlier during one of the celebrations. Me Too noticed this car and he could make out that the vehicle was a Marathi, but could not see if anyone was in it. As he and Jassi approached the car on their scooter, Me Too could see one man carrying a long curb pen. Which is a curved single-edged blade, and 3 others with a sharpened filled hockey sticks. It was too late for them to turn around. Me Too tries to gun the scooter, but one of the men swung a hockey stick at him. Me Too ducked instinctively to swerve around the men, and Jassi was screaming. The stick missed Me Too but struck Jassi on the side of her head, and they both ended up falling on the road. 3 of the men swarmed Me Too, not giving him a chance to help Jassi nor escape them. The other man held on to Jassi as she was screaming for help in Punjabi and in English. Me Too could not get up to save Jassi. Me Too said that he could see Jassi being dragged to the car by her wrist. Me Too could not get up to save Jassi. Me Too said that he could see Jassi being dragged to the car by the wrist. Suddenly, Me Too sees one of the men with a sword coming down on his face. Me Too puts up his hands To shield himself, the sword cuts through his hand between the middle finger and the ring finger right down to the wrist and shatters the bone and cuts off his ring finger. The men continue to beat Mitu on his head with the hockey sticks. Mitu's ear was torn and hanging from the side of his face. Mitu said that he could no longer see Jassi anymore due to the blood covering his eyes. He could only hear her screaming. Mitu turned his head to try to see if he could see Jassi, but could only see her sandals on the road. When Mitu turns his head upward, he is met with one of the men who has attacked him and his beloved Jassi. All of a sudden, Mitu feels a sharp pain to his head and things just went black. Mitu's unconscious. Jassi is then taken away. Once Mitu comes to, he feels nothing but the sharp pain and tries with all his strength to move and head towards his uncle's home. Mitu tries to call out for Jassi, but got no answer in return. Once he reaches his uncle's home, he collapses and cries out for help. Mitu's uncle comes running out and sees his nephew, who has been badly beaten and all bloodied. Mitu tries to tell his uncle what happened and that he says they took Jassi. And then he ends up losing consciousness again. He ends up blacking out again. Mitu's uncle and the villagers bound the wounds as best as they could and rushed Mitu to the civil hospital in Malkit. I'm sorry if I'm saying that word wrong. For almost a month, Mitu is in and out of a coma. First at the Malkit hospital and then at the Christian Medical College in Luhania. No one would tell Mitu what has happened to Jassi. Once Mitu is released from the hospital, he returns back to his uncle's home, where the family believed that Mitu would be safer there. Inspector Swarn Singh was at Mitu's uncle's home waiting for him after being discharged. This is the same inspector who tried to question Mitu on what had happened to him and Jassi. The inspector, Swarn Singh, begins to tell Mitu about his investigation in the horror of June 8, 2000. The inspector tells Mitu that this is not the first time that Jassi's family had tried to kill him, and that this may not be the last. One plan involved a hit and run. Another was to ambush Mitu and Jassi near the Narakasar temple in Kalaran. The inspector tells Mitu that he has arrested all involved except for the mother and uncle in Canada. The conspiracy was hatched in Maple Ridge on the west coast of Canada by Jassi's millionaire uncle Surjit Singh Bashad and Jassi's mother Malkit Karar. It was modified efforts to get Jassi's home, and increasing demands from the hired hitman. The group assigned to the murder a motley collection of angry family members, a crooked cop, and a member of a local land mafia group. It was here in India, the man who organized the hit on Mitu was Darshan Singh, who was 51 years old. Darshan Singh worked with Joginder Singh, a 47-year-old cop with the rank of sub-inspector at the Guru Taj Bahadur Nagara police station. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. The plan primarily involved Mitu's death being investigated by this cop, who closed the file quickly due to lack of evidence. The fee was 25 rupees, which was $50,000. Sub-Inspector Joginder Singh worked hand in glove with a land mafia group from Lugania that was run by Anil Kumar, 40 years old, of 344 model gram. He had hired Gurwinder Singh Chima, who's 26, who was basically a farmer from Jassian village, Gusharan, aka Tony Singh, who's 24, is an electrician from Kushana Nagara, and Ashwani Kumar, 24, a student from Hobol Kurd. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. These hired thugs was already known in the area as they forcibly took over lands that belonged to people who had gone overseas and claimed it as their own, using corrupt officials and fake papers. So others involved in the conspiracy, including one of Jassi's cousin, was Hardev Singh, aka Mintu, which is Mintu, was 31 years old, of Kanaki Card. Inspector Swaran Singh to Mitu's while handling over photos. Mitu recognized some of the faces from the night Jassi and him were attacked. The other photos showed a long curved pen, which is the single edge blade, one of Jassi's sandals with the word made in Italy, with the handle of a cricket bat, also the handle of a cricket bat, the upper portion of a hockey stick, and several mobile phones, and a white and a white Maruti car with the number plate 4862. After seeing all this, Mitu could not bear to look at the pictures any longer. Mitu then presses the inspector. He basically says, and I quote, "So tell me now what happened to Jassi." The inspector opens another file and looks up at Mitu and basically says, "Everything?" The inspector asks him, and Mitu nods his head in agreement, basically saying, "Yeah, I want to know everything." This is what happened to Jassi on June 8th, 2000. Jassi was bleeding from the blow to her head after the assailant left Mitu for dead. She was pinned down in the back seat of the car by two of the men, one of them whom had a cell phone. Swaran told Mitu, recounting what one of the assassins confessed to him. Two guys sat at the back. There was the driver and the man in the front seat with the cell phone. He was talking on the phone, first to Darshan Singh, then to Jassi's relative back in Canada. Jassi was screaming, trying to get the attention of the people on the other end of the phone. So they gagged her with a piece of cloth torn from a shirt. The white Maruti sped towards a secluded farmhouse in Bolayar, I think that's how you pronounce it. A small village of about 2,500 people located about 5 kilometers from Ludania city. The farmhouse was behind a large gate and shielded by trees. It was abandoned and currently owned by Anil Kumar, the leader of the hired hitman. He had seized the property through a land grab scheme. The unfinished red brick building surrounded by open fields had 2 levels that were linked by an uneven outside staircase. Jassi's feet and hands were bounded and she was tied to a chair in a separate room while the killers drank local moonshine, argued, and made phone calls on their cell phones. One of the assassins, Ashwani Kumar, sharpened a long car pin using a stone that he had found, that he had picked up from the unfinished floor of the main room. Anil Kumar, who is basically the kingpin, was furious and shouting on the phone. He was asking for guaranteed that Jassi would never return to India and that she would never speak to anybody about what just happened. The phone was then held against Jassi's ear while her uncle berated her for the dishonor that was the cause of tonight's retribution. Jassi pleaded to talk to her mother, who then came on the phone. Jassi's mother did nothing at all. Basically was saying what you did was unforgivable. Jassi pleaded to talk to her mother. Jassi started pleading with her mother to save her. Her mother was just unforgiving. Her mother wasn't relenting at all whatsoever. She's basically like, I have no daughter. You dishonor this family and everything. So Anil then yanked the phone angrily away from Jassi, and there was another heated exchange on the phone between Anil and Jassi's relative, including her mother. Jassi's family had only committed to paying for one murder. Now they were negotiating money with the contract killers to murder Jassi, but would not pay extra money for the second murder. There was, however, the ultimate bargaining chip, Jassi. In the eyes of her family, Jassi was threatening to destroy everything they had worked for. She had disobeyed the rules of the clan. Allegedly, her mother said, "What good is a daughter who will not obey her mother? She will be violated." Allegedly, that was said. Jassi's mother then offered Jassi to the gang. It offset the price of her murder. Her mother came on the line and spoke to the killers, saying, end quote, "You have a woman. Do what you will have to do." End quote. It is unclear how many times Jassi was raped before her throat was slit. No one from her family heard the anguished screams. They were sitting around the phone in Maple Ridge, Canada, waiting to hear that their problem had been solved. The call came after a long night. The killers had dumped Jassi's body in a water-filled ditch about 1 mile away from the abandoned farmhouse where she was silenced. Jassi's ravaged body was found partially submerged the next morning by a passing cyclist who called the police.
A villager walking by this irrigation ditch found her body lying in the water at daylight.
ਫਿਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਜਾਣੇ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਜੱਸੀ ਦੀ ਲਾਸ਼ ਹੈ ਪੁੱਛੋ ਨਾ ਫਿਰ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਹਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਾਮੜੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਦਾ ਆਪ ਖਪਾ ਕੇ ਹਾਏ ਪੁੱਤ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਤੇਰੀ ਕਿਸਮਤ ਮਾੜੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਪੁੱਤ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਲੋਕ ਛਿਪ ਕੇ ਰਹੋ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਪੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਧੱਕੇ ਚੜ ਗਈ ਕੱਲੇ ਆਵੇ ਨਾਨਕਾ सदैव उठी जाए दे मावक अनुसार आप भी दे दर कर दे पीतवान चंद से बीबी जसविंदर जस्सी कनेडा निवासी पत्नी सुखविंदर मिट्ठू काल चलाना कर गए हैं नानक नाम चढ़दी कला तेरे पाने सर्वत दा भला.
We couldn't believe it. We'd heard about it, but we didn't think it was true. Everyone was just devastated. We just couldn't believe it. She would always joke, "Oh, they're going to make a movie about my life one of these days," because, and we'd always say, "Oh, but at least it'll have a happy ending," Well, we didn't know that this was going to happen.
Me Too, with broken bones and serious head injuries, drifted in and out of consciousness for more than a month. He'd asked for Jassi. His friends couldn't bear to tell him the truth. News of the murdered bride filled the papers. Readers devoured every detail about the beautiful, wealthy Canadian woman whose love for a lowly rickshaw driver cost her her very life. The endless publicity elevated the hunt for her killers to a police
Extraditing Jassi's uncle and mother became problematic. India was quick to charge the two due to the evidence, but for some strange reason, Canada was working at snail's pace. For some strange reason, Canada kept making reasons as to why they wasn't going to expedite the uncle and the mother to India, because India was like, hey, we need you to send them back. We have evidence that they are behind this and we are going to charge them. And so Canada's like, first they're like, oh, we don't know, we should send them back because we don't think they'll be safe. Another one was they claim that if a crime is committed somewhere else that is not in Canada, then the citizens of Canada can't be charged, which is completely false, because under section 456, I think it was, they kept making up these allegations, like some reason to not send Jassi's mother and uncle to India to pay for what they did. Some people now believe that since it's taken so long for a conviction and for them to be punished for Jassi's murder, that they feel like they will get away with it. They've been charged, they've been arrested since January of 2019, and they were expedited, I think it was like February or March or somewhere around there, where they were expedited to India. But as far as I know, nothing really came of it. They did have their day in court, but they're still free. Former Pitt Meadows secondary principal James Longridge ended up putting a scholarship in Jassi's honor. In June of 2021, the scholarship will be presented annually to a graduating student from District 42 in her honor. And this was just really, really sad and crazy that Jassi went through this. Some people think that it was Me Too's fault. He was just trying to look for a way to get to Canada. But these two really did love each other. If you read the book Justice for Jassi, read that. Don't watch Murder Unveiled and all that. Read Justice for Jassi, and you could see like how much they really loved each other. I was really sad and really pissed off at the same time, because she deserved justice, even though she did get justice for the ones who killed her, but the ones who orchestrated it, they need to go to jail for what they did. And I hope that, they do go to jail for that. Down below, do put hashtag justice for Jassi, and do share this video, because it definitely helps. And the only reason why the case was moved along back in 2019 is because of the book Justice for Jassi. You can get it on Amazon. I'll post the link down below and everything. Tell me what you think of this story. Let me know how you feel about it. And don't forget to put hashtag justice for Jassi in the comment section and share this video. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves. Bye.